Hello everyone. First, I would just like to thank you all for the wonderful response and feedback from my Tarkovsky video and my Tar review. It's been genuinely amazing to see how many of you enjoyed my videos, and I'm looking forward to giving you guys plenty more content. I'm just finishing off watching films for my annual Best Film of the Year video, and I've got a big Kurosawa project which I'd really like to make. But while those were both in pre-production, I wanted to give you 5 strong recommendations of underrated films by already famous directors. Now, it must be said that the term underrated gets mistakenly used synonymously with obscure. An underrated film isn't necessarily a film that's hard to find or unknown, but a film which people just don't rate highly enough. There are many filmmakers out there whose less well-regarded works can sometimes be as good as, or frankly even better than, their most famous films. So today we're going to take a look at 5 films that may have slipped you by despite the fact they're from some of the most successful directors out there.
A preacher helped me put some distance between me and the bottle. And he helped me see the reason I was drinking. I was seeing all them things here that I'd seen over there.
Lots of men came back drinking hard.
Well, everyone trying to forget.
People oftentimes refer to The Straight Story alongside The Elephant Man as David Lynch's, quote, normal films, but nevertheless, Lynch's style and some of his imagery runs straight through this film, just perhaps with a lot less darkness and surrealism. The quirkiness of Americana that threaded right the way through the original run of Twin Peaks is here, alongside a truly heartfelt story about the desire to make amends, and perhaps more subtly about the World War II generation in their old age. Richard Farnsworth gives an outstanding lead performance in this, and his character is just filled with warmth and good humour, but also all the supporting performances are loaded with subtleties as well. Farnsworth received an Oscar nomination for his performance, and the film received critical acclaim, but has since gotten the reputation of being a footnote in Lynch's filmography. The U-rated, Disney-distributed movie that David Lynch made. It doesn't even have a UK or US Blu-ray release, and that's a real shame. If you're one of the many Lynch fans who've not yet seen this film, because unfortunately in my experience there are quite a few, please go and watch it. It easily lives up to the quality of Lynch's catalogue.
说到颁封忘了恭喜你，梁先生升官了。
啥子了不起的官喽？管大米的。
现在连印度米托人都还买不到，
管粮食可比管金库厉害。
你听易太太的就对了。
听我的，我可不是活菩萨，倒是你老马应该听听我的。接个管运输的，3天2头不在家，把你都放野了。
我可没闲呢，他家3亲4戚每天来求事，走廊都睡满了。
吃，
可以找差事不算，
还要张罗他们吃喝。我这管后勤的还没薪饷可拿。
就是，人家麦太太弄不清楚了，以为汪里头的官都是我们这些太太们牌桌上派的呢。那可不就是吗？
After the wild success of Brokeback Mountain, Ang Lee returned to Taiwan and used the goodwill he had amassed from that film's massive box office gross, awards triumph, and cultural notoriety to make a film that was released incredibly widely and then completely forgotten about. Seriously, this played on so many screens in places that would never normally play a foreign language film, but it received mixed reviews from critics, many of whom just focused on the film's graphic sex. Fortunately, people are slowly starting to come around to the fact that this is one of the best films of the 2000s, and in my opinion, Ang Lee's second best film, closely behind Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. This is a harrowing and Hitchcockian spy thriller set in occupied Shanghai, expertly capturing the period with at times genuinely stunning cinematography and production design. Even more amazing than that, however, are the performances. Tang Wei, whom you may have seen recently in Park Chan-wook's latest film Decision to Leave, nails her character's arc perfectly. This was her first major role, and it unfortunately led to her being blacklisted because of the film's sexual content. A man who was not blacklisted, however, for appearing in the exact same scenes was Tony Leung. Leung is one of my favourite actors, and for my money, this is his best performance. And the subtleties he brings to the character help establish him as one of my favourite villains in cinema. Also, without spoiling anything, this is my favourite ending to any movie. Please watch this film if you haven't already. I think it's one of the most pleasant cinematic surprises I've discovered in recent years. And speaking of Hitchcockian thrillers...
Are you going sketching this afternoon?
Yes.
Where?
I haven't made up my mind.
I'll drive you somewhere in the car.
Oh no, please, I didn't mean.
Oh, nonsense. Finish up that mess and we'll get along.
Thank you, it's very kind of you, but I'm not very hungry.
Oh, come on, eat it up like a good girl.
Hitchcock's Rebecca really deserves more love. Adapted from the Daphne du Maurier novel of the same name, This gothic thriller is a magnificently twisted and dark ride, especially considering the fact that it was released in 1940. In classic Hitchcock fashion, the film is constantly trying to wrong-foot you to keep you guessing what is actually going on. Hitchcock's trademark suspenseful direction expertly captures this feeling, putting you right in the mindset of Joan Fontaine's character. But what really elevates this film is the performances. Fontaine oozes the classic dichotomy of vulnerability and strength that was basically a requisite for Golden Age Hollywood heroines, while Laurence Olivier completely transforms himself into Mr. De Winter. Going toe-to-toe with the great Laurence Olivier, however, is Judith Anderson in her absolutely terrifying portrayal of the housekeeper, Mrs. Danvers. This film was recently remade for Netflix by Ben Wheatley. I have not seen the remake because if I'm ever in the mood to watch Rebecca, I'm just gonna watch the original. But Mrs. Danvers in that is played by Christian Scott Thomas, and admittedly that is very good casting. Though Rebecca has been cited as an influence on both Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread and Park's The Handmaiden, it is still far too low down people's rankings of Hitchcock's filmography, and would definitely be considered one of the Master of Suspense's most underrated films.
En meneer Henkoff, wat betaalt u daar nou voor?
Niks. Het is gratis reclame.
Momentje, alsjeblieft. Ja?
Ik zei niks. Het is reclame voor jullie, betalen we niks voor.
Voor niks gaat de zon op.
Ben je ook van deze motorclub?
Zo hoort er helemaal niet bij. Die jongens maken onkosten, die moet je betalen. Logisch, hè?
Ja. Oké, de benzine betaal ik goed.
En de rest, je wilt toch een leuk programma? Zonder ons wordt het niks. Geen poen, geen motorclub. Hé, jongens!
Wat had jij dan gedacht?
5 mil.
Dat is te veel. De helft is zat, oké?
Oké, 2,5. Daar doen we het toch voor?
Paul Verhoeven is one of the most interesting filmmakers of the past 50 years. The director of such classics as RoboCop and Starship Troopers is always delighted in provocation. Indeed, both these films take to task the kind of vapid and gratuitous Hollywood blockbusters that were so common. Ironic then that both these films were mistakenly counted amongst those kinds of movies by many in the US, including many critics at the time. Anyway, while the 84-year-old Verhoeven is currently going through a career renaissance with his transgressive French films Elle and Bernadetta, many people still remain uninitiated with the director's Dutch work. And while The Fourth Man has gone on to become a cult classic, less is said about his previous film Spetters. Spetters, which roughly translates to good-looking person, is a kind of edgy teen drama that UK audiences probably most associate with the television show Skins. We follow a bunch of very human but also fairly unlikable characters navigating the latter years of their adolescence through a mix of sex, dirt bike racing and homophobic machismo. Occasionally thought of as the Dutch antidote to Grease, which was only released 2 years prior, this film pulls no punches. The script is intelligent and well written, tackling themes of toxic masculinity, sexuality and religion. Verhoeven's direction too shows off his ambition and strong understanding of good cinematic storytelling. There are aspects of this film that have aged poorly, namely the film's most shocking scene, which plays on very damaging homophobic stereotypes. And if I'm ever lucky enough to attend a Q&A with Verhoeven, I want to ask him if he has any reflections or regret about this. That being said, this is still a very thought-provoking and engaging watch, and if you've been enjoying Verhoeven's recent work, then I would highly recommend journeying back through his very varied filmography.
The new millennium, this is amazing, will bring a new experience.
You're the power source. We'll see how natural it feels.
Where the playing field is a parallel universe.
The game's a lot more fun when it starts feeling realer than real. Who's fighting it?
And lastly, we have an underappreciated science fiction film from the master of body horror, David Cronenberg. eXistenZ, that's lowercase e, uppercase x, uppercase z, was released in the same year as The Matrix, and in my mind belongs to the exact same school of smart and cerebral blockbusters. Of course, eXistenZ possessed less than half of the budget of The Matrix, yet the desire to fuse speculative philosophy with popcorn thrills is still present. I rewatched this recently, and for a film made about computers 24 years ago, my word, it has aged spectacularly well. The moral questions this film discusses are incredibly relevant to development of new technologies such as the metaverse, and its visualization of this technology is remarkably prophetic, with just a good sprinkling of that weird Cronenberg fleshiness that we have all come to expect. The film's story builds absolutely perfectly, and its pacing is fantastic, properly building up expectations in its world before it lets you travel inside the titular VR video game. This really should be more of a mainstream recognizable film. I wouldn't say this is quite as good as The Fly, which is definitely the director's most recognizable film, but if more people saw this, it really could be thought of alongside it. Most people really don't seem to think that this film is anything special, but to me, it definitely stands out as one of my favorite David Cronenbergs. Plus the casting. Who doesn't love to see Willem Dafoe and Christopher Eccleston, am I right? So there you have it, 5 underrated films from great directors. While I was making my plan for this video, I wrote down a lot of films that could have been here, so who knows, I might make a sequel at some point. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any upcoming content. I really hope you're all enjoying my work, and I will see you all next time.